Welcome to part two of the Marriage Covenant series. The reason why this is called the Marriage Covenant series is because God intended for a man and a woman to marry from the very beginning. And what God did at the beginning of creation is He created one human being that was one flesh, split the human being into two beings, a man and a woman, and then He married them. This video is titled A Woman Isn't a Side Piece. And that's because we're going to look at some words again in the Hebrew text that show that God maybe didn't take a woman from a man's rib. God did something with a human being. And I think He did it in a way that there were two equal beings created from one human being. So enjoy part number two. And again, I encourage you, read the Bible, read it with fresh eyes, get a concordance, go on the internet, get a Bible app, and start finding some treasure that goes beyond what you're taught in the pulpit, or maybe what you've even read as you've been reading the Bible the same way for years. Enjoy part two of the Marriage Covenant series.
The next verse that I want to use is Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. Adam, or the human being, still exists at the times that the Lord God said, it is not good for the human being to be alone. I will make a suitable helper for him. Let's get back over to the Hebrew part of that so I can show you. The Lord God also said, it is not good for the human being to be alone. Let me highlight that for you. It is not good for the human being to be alone. He didn't say it's not good for a man or a male to be alone. He said it is not good for the unified human being, because the human being is still both male and female at this point, to be alone. And I will make a suitable helper for the human being. We're going to move to Genesis 2:21. That's Genesis 2nd chapter, verse 21. But what I want you to see here is a continuation of the narrative that God created a human being who at this time is not a man, but is both male and female. We'll go to the Hebrew again, and we will see that the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every bird of the air, and He brought them to the human being. He brought them, again, translations say man, and that is why we think that the human being was a man, but the human being was both male and female. So Genesis 2:21 is going to show us where God then says, and again, we're using the NIV, the New International Version. So the Lord God caused the human being. Anywhere where I see man, I'm going to emphasize human being because that's what it is. God caused the human being to fall into a deep sleep, and while the human being, was sleeping, he took one of the man's ribs. This is an important word right here, and then closed up the place with flesh. So let's get over to Hebrew. So the Lord God caused the human being to fall into a deep sleep, and while he slept, he took one of the man's ribs. Here is a very important word that we use as ribs. This is Strong's 6723. The word that is used for rib is sila or tsila, but it is only translated as ribs in Genesis 21 and 22. In every other place, in the other 39 occurrences, it says right here that it's used 41 times, and every one of the other 39 times is used as side. You see that side, side. It might say part. So what that means is that God took the human being, took the parts of the human being, and He did not take a rib. He took a human being that was both male and female. And then in Genesis 2:22, He then made a woman. Let's show you this. From the Selah, that the Lord God had taken out of the human being, He made, and I'll underline that, out of the human being, he made a woman called an Issa, and from the human being.
Now, wasn't that fascinating? We see that the word that has been translated as rib comes from the Hebrew word sila, and sila in every part, in 39 other uses of the word, means part or side. And that makes sense when we think about God creating the human being as one flesh, who is both male, Zahar, and female, Nakiba. And when God takes a part of the one flesh human being and takes Zohar, the male part, and calls him man, Ish, and then takes the other part or the other side of the human being, and that part which was called Nakiba becomes a woman called an Isha, we see that from one flesh, God created a man and a woman. So stay tuned. One more video. In part 3, we will look at what God did with the man and the woman, the Ish and the Isha, who came from one flesh of the human being.